Hello, and welcome back to the Empower Her podcast. Hi, everyone. Just a reminder that I'm now doing video podcasts. So if you're listening on Apple or Spotify and want to see my fabulous face on YouTube, then feel free to go to YouTube, and all the episodes are up there as well. And of course, please leave a 5-star review if you love listening to these episodes and you really like this one. So today I want to talk about a topic that I have been thinking about talking about for a while now. I wasn't sure if this was something I wanted to discuss because it feels quite personal, and I think especially considering the type of coach I am, I didn't want it to come off in a negative way. But I decided after a lot of thought, talking to other people, that I do feel like this actually makes me a better coach. And there may be many other people who feel a similar way as I do. So I wanted to share. So if you're here, or maybe you don't know this about me, maybe you do, I am a coach. I specialize in career coaching, and I also work and specialize in working with neurodivergent, high-achieving individuals. And I have never identified as neurodivergent. And I tell this to people when they ask me, right? In fact, I didn't even think about me being neurodivergent, or that was even an option, until I had a networking call. This was a few months ago. I had a networking call with a fellow neurodivergent coach. I had reached out to this person because I just wanted to connect with them and talk to them. And after we had talked for a while, she said to me, "I can't believe you're not neurodivergent." And this almost set a light bulb off in my brain. And, we had been talking about what neurodivergence looks like, and she was telling me what her definition of it is. I was telling her what I feel like it is, working with my clients. And I was saying that, even though I don't identify as neurodivergent, a lot of the experiences they have, I feel so connected to it. And I feel so in tune with those experiences that they're having, and the tools that I use for myself help them as well. And so she said, "I can't believe you're not neurodivergent." And, when I was growing up, it wasn't a taboo topic, I would say, just that it wasn't something that was even considered. My parents never talked to me about it. It was never something, we really discussed. I think back then too, maybe when I was a kid, this was, a long time ago now, neurodivergence was looked at quite differently. I still think people look at it as a negative, which I don't believe that it is, but I think still people do. But back in the day, I think neurodivergence definitely had a negative connotation. So unless you were a child who, didn't do well in school or had a lot of behavioral issues and challenges, neurodivergence wasn't even an option, right? And now we know as well that neurodivergence in girls looks different than in boys, etc. So there's so many nuanced reasons why this never even would have been, a situation at all. And again, like, I grew up, I had really good grades, I played sports, I had friends, there was no behavior besides talking back to my parents because I had a big mouth. I love talking back. But besides that, there was nothing really else to showcase that I was having any challenges or issues. So again, it was never something that I ever thought about. It was never something I discussed. And people always ask me, and all of the people I network with, most of the people I network with, and they're in neurodivergent coaching, it's because they're neurodivergent, right? And so people are always surprised when I tell them, it's not because I'm neurodivergent or I don't identify that way. It's because I've, seen so many other neurodivergent individuals and I wanted to help them. So again, it was never something that I thought it was until this person in this call said to me, "I'm surprised you're not neurodivergent." And since then, it sort of took me down a path of trying to understand if that might be the case. I've taken assessments, I've done the research. Obviously, I do the research anyways because I work with neurodivergent clients. It's part of, what I do, and I understand what the signs are, the, different character traits are. Like, I know what they are, but I think when it comes to yourself, you always have to do a little more research because you have to be sure, right? You're not entirely sure. And so I know what it looks like and I know what to look for, but it's different, I think, when you're talking about yourself. And every assessment I took said that I had a high probability of, being neurodivergent. And again, obviously these assessments are not doctors. This is just me trying to, figure out what I was and trying to understand, a different part of me. And, it's really interesting to go down this path because I really think that these thoughts and realizations I've been having, these feelings I've been having, actually allow me to be a better coach because I can be more sensitive to what my clients are going through. I can understand their struggles. I have a lot of clients who don't know if they're neurodivergent. I just had a client tell me that they're getting tested, right? Like all of those things allow me to be a better coach. And, the reason I was hesitant about sharing this is because I don't have a diagnosis. I didn't go to a doctor to talk about this. I'm not sure that I am going to do that right now. Maybe at some point we'll see. It's just not something I want to do right now because I do feel like if I were to be neurodivergent, I feel like I can manage it. I do a lot of great things, a lot of tools, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I just didn't, want it to feel like I don't know my own self. But I think the beauty of it is, and this is honestly what I share online, what I share with my clients, it doesn't matter if you're neurodivergent or not from the perspective of if a tool or a strategy I have works for you, then it works for you, right? It doesn't matter. Like I have tools that I use for both my neurotypical and neurodivergent clients, right? There's ones that don't work for one. There's ones that do for the other, right? So I think it's more about those tools that I'm using, those strategies that I'm using, do they work for me? And if they work for me, can I share those with other people? And then you can decide, right? You can say it works for you, it doesn't work for you, take it or leave it. Not everything has to resonate, right? Not all neurodivergent people are the same either. Certain tools will work, certain tools won't. But I do think that this allows me to be a better coach and it allows me to better understand my clients, both neurotypical and neurodivergent. And so that's why I really wanted to share these struggles and these realizations I've been having because I think it's quite insightful. And I know a lot of my clients have a similar experience where they find out, especially my female high achieving clients, they find out they're neurodivergent in their late 20s and 30s for the most part, right? Because we're so unclear about what that looks like, especially in women, So I just wanted to share kind of these realizations I've been having and how this has personally affected me. And again, this doesn't change anything for me, right? Like if someone tomorrow were to tell me, yes, you're diagnosed neurodivergent, it wouldn't change anything for me. I live a happy life. I have a regulated nervous system. I'm working towards my goals. I feel like I can concentrate. I feel motivated, right? When I don't feel good, I know the changes that I need to make, right? So it's not going to change anything for me other than knowing. And again, maybe I will go talk to a doctor at some point. Right now, I'm having mixed thoughts about it. But, there's a lot of tools and strategies that I've been doing over the last 5 years in my spiritual journey. And from a spiritual perspective, I do think, if I were to be neurodivergent, officially diagnosed, I'm already doing all those tools that I teach my neurodivergent clients, right? I've already been doing them for 5 years. That's part of my spiritual journey that I've been going through. And I think, if we believe in a universe or we believe in energy, there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason for that. And I have so many great tools, and I just wanted to share a couple of those that I use. So when I started my spiritual journey 5 years ago, which I talk about a lot, 2020, the beginning was my low point. And that's when I started meditating and doing breath work. That was extremely helpful for me because I was literally having panic attacks, which I had never had before. I was, crying to the point of having panic attacks. I was so stressed, so anxious. I had such a dysregulated nervous system now looking back. And doing meditation and breath work allowed me to calm my nervous system and actually see myself for who I am. It was such a dark time for me. And then when I felt like, my panic attacks had subsided a bit and I was getting control back of my body, then I started implementing things like mindset work. So affirmations specifically, I was hooked on Gabby Bernstein. I listened to her meditation. She had a really good affirmation, and she had really good ways of calling in energy. And that's one of the ways I manifested my husband, which I have an episode about if you're curious of how I manifested my partner. And I talk all about it there. But affirmations really helped build my confidence, right? And that's something that's super easy to do. You can write out 2 or 3 affirmations. You always want to put it in an abundant phrase. So I am worthy of, $100,000 salary, for example. That's a good affirmation to have. Or, I am beautiful and I am loved, right? Something like that. Affirmations are great because you can do them literally in your head. You don't necessarily have to say them out loud. You can do them when you're doing anything, waking up in the morning, driving, making your breakfast, whatever it is. Another thing I love is time management tools, which have really helped me. I've always been someone that's been pretty good at concentrating, I would say. But, with neurodivergent individuals, a lot of times we're talking about a lack of concentration with tasks that aren't exciting, right? So things like when I've had to do things like I don't love doing administration. I don't love writing notes. Okay. So time management tools and time blocking, setting timers, making weekly task notes. Those have been super helpful for me to concentrate and to get through those tasks that maybe I don't feel as excited about. Because unfortunately, while I believe we should do what we love and, we should spend our day in abundance and enjoy, I don't think it's realistic to say that you're only going to do things that you like. Like, I'm a business owner. I have to do things I don't enjoy. It's part of the business, right? At least for right now. So, when it comes to tasks like that, we use these time management tools, right? Another thing is goal setting, right? Traditional goal setting doesn't work for me. I love habit stacking. I love redefining how I set goals into smaller, more manageable parts, right? For me, it doesn't work to set goals for a year, 5 years. Like, if you tell me to create a 5-year plan, that gives me massive anxiety. I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. I also don't want to plan for 5 years ahead, right? Like, I would love to say I want to be in this house, living in this city, whatever, but I'm someone that understands that life changes and I want to be open to the changes. And to me, that gives me anxiety. If it works for you, great, but it doesn't work for me. So I love things like setting smaller goals, like monthly goals, and then breaking them down into weekly goals. Habit stacking is really great for a lot of my neurodivergent clients. I love that as well. So there's a lot of great tools. And again, everything I've just mentioned, these are all tools that I've personally tried and tested. These are tools that work for me, that I love, right? And it's no surprise it works for me, right? If I'm neurotypical, then it can still work. If I happen to be neurodivergent, it can also work. But I take what works and take what doesn't, right? And I also have tools that maybe aren't my favorite, but I know they work for neurodivergent individuals. And so I share those with my clients. So again, me taking this reflection and understanding better who I am is making me a better coach and a better person to those around me, which I think is super, super important. So obviously neurodivergence has a lot of different, personality traits, character traits, right? And there's a lot of things that go into being neurodivergent. And while, again, I don't have an answer from a doctor, there are a lot of things that I resonate with. For example, masking is a very common neurodivergent trait. It's when you put on a facade, a front, you try to mold to your surroundings. And this can be really stressful for neurodivergent individuals long term because they're trying to fit into a neurotypical world. And, for me, I always had a dysregulated nervous system, but I didn't realize it until I started regulating it. And so looking back, I can totally understand how in school or with different people, I could have been masking, right? And that's why I felt like, oh, I'm an extrovert, or, oh, I don't need a break, or I need less sleep, right? Because my nervous system was out of whack. So of course I didn't know what I actually needed, versus now I can understand and feel what I need because I'm no longer masking, right? So that's, something common as well that has come up that's been, really interesting also. Something else I've noticed since I started regulating my nervous system is I've become much more hypersensitive to my surroundings. I become extremely overstimulated quite easily. Again, something I never experienced before, but I think the more regulated your nervous system is, and this goes for everyone, the more aware you are of your surroundings, right? And a lot of neurodivergent individuals are hypersensitive. They're empaths. They can read people well, right? Because that's how their brain works, right? It's usually due to the ability to be able to process that information at a quicker speed, and they're more sensitive to stimuli, which is why they get overstimulated quite easily, right? So that's like something interesting that I've had to deal with that I know a lot of neurodivergent people deal with as well. Another thing is daydreaming, which before I became a neurodivergent coach, I didn't know this, but daydreaming is a neurodivergent trait. And, sometimes that can be looked at as negative. I've had that said that that's negative. Why am I daydreaming? Why? People have told me all the time, oh, your goals are too big. You need to be more realistic, right? But actually, daydreaming is a really beautiful tool. Not only can you visualize your life and what you want, but it also allows you to see your goals for what they are and dream big. And a lot of neurodivergent individuals are extremely high achieving, right? Like I've always had big goals that people have said are unrealistic. But now when we talk about manifestation, manifesting all these things, now people realize that that's actually the case. So that's a really interesting trait that I found to be super, super positive. Another trait is, people often say that neurodivergent individuals, specifically ADHD, have trouble focusing or concentrating. I disagree with that, and there's evidence to show that that's not the case. Again, it depends on the person, and there is a lot of differences between neurodivergent individuals as well. But if you're interested in something, neurodivergent individuals are typically great at focusing. That's why I was really good at school, right? I can sit down and study or sit down and spend a lot of time looking at one thing because I'm interested in it, right? And so it's been really interesting to go through this, looking at these different traits, looking at, the different neurodivergent aspects of life, trying to understand who I am, where I fit in. But I really think at the end of the day, whether I'm neurospicy, as we like to call it, or not, the point is that I know what I need to feel good. I know what I need to sleep well, to show up, to be successful in my business, to be a good person, to be a good wife, to be a good friend, to be a good daughter, right? And that's what's important. And I think that that's important for everybody, and especially for those who have felt shame around their diagnosis. I know a lot of people grew up with shame around their diagnosis. It is not something to be shameful of. The fact that your brain works differently is a blessing. It's something that's positive. It's something that's absolutely beautiful. We need neurodivergent brains in society to come up with creative ideas, to look at information differently, to understand the world in a new way. So whether you are neurodivergent or not, whether I am or not, at the end of the day, the goal and my goal is always to help you become the best version of yourself as a coach. And I really believe that with this is just going to enhance my ability to do that, right? And I might start documenting my journey a little bit, how I'm feeling. I definitely would love your thoughts on, if this is something you're interested in hearing about. Again, it was something I was really nervous to talk about, but if it's something y'all feel like is helpful, could be helpful, it may be something that I'll start sharing more of as well. But of course, I'm always going to share my tools and strategies. I've been doing that up until now. Everything I've shared on the podcast, on social media, everywhere, it's all my tools and strategies. And, just a last message to everyone that regardless of if you're neurodivergent or not, your brain is beautiful, you are worthy, and the goal is to live your best life possible, whatever that means to you, okay? Doesn't matter what that is. Whatever that looks like, that's the goal in life. All right. I hope y'all enjoyed the episode. Thank you for getting to the end if you're here. I really appreciate you listening, especially such a vulnerable episode. And I'll catch you next week. Hope y'all have an amazing rest of your week. Bye.